My mother looked me straight in the eye and said, "We've set up college funds for all the grandchildren, except Melody." The words hung in the air, like a slap I should have seen coming, but somehow didn't. When I asked why my daughter was excluded from this family blessing, she shrugged with the casual cruelty only a parent can perfect. "Let's be realistic, Diane. She'll probably just get married anyway. Boys need education more. They'll have families to support." I'm Diane Brennan, 38 years old, and in that moment, sitting at my parents' mahogany dining table, I felt my entire world tilt off its axis. But I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I simply nodded and continued cutting my turkey while my mother announced that they'd invested $35,000 in each of my brother's sons' futures. $35,000 each for Bryce and Cole, my nephews who spent more time on PlayStation than homework. $0 for Melody, my daughter who'd been reading medical journals since she was 12. My mother, Ruth Brennan, had always been the family's financial gatekeeper. At 65, she wore her control like her string of pearls, polished and prominent. She'd inherited a substantial sum from my grandfather and managed it with the iron fist of someone who believed money was power, and power should flow through male bloodlines. My father, Frank, had spent 30 years carrying mail and another 10 years in retirement, carrying my mother's opinions as if they were his own. "The boys are going places," my mother continued, beaming at my brother Todd, who sat across from me with his wife Janine. "Todd's already teaching them about real estate. They'll be empire builders, just like their father." Todd had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting in his seat while his wife nodded enthusiastically. Todd was 40, 2 years older than me, and had built what everyone called a successful real estate business. What they didn't mention was the 3 refinanced mortgages and the constant bailouts from our mother when deals went south. His twin boys, Bryce and Cole, were 15 and carbon copies of their father, charming, confident, and coasting through life on assumptions of inherited success. "Empire builders," I repeated quietly, glancing at Melody, who sat beside me with her hands folded in her lap. At 14, she had the composure of someone twice her age, a skill she'd learned from watching adults dismiss her existence at every family gathering. She'd won the state science fair 3 months ago with a project on neurotransmitters that even I, a registered nurse, had trouble fully understanding. Not one person at this table had congratulated her. "What about Melody's empire?" I asked, my voice steady as lake water before a storm. My mother actually laughed. The sound tinkled through the dining room like breaking glass. "Oh, Diane, sweet, idealistic Diane. Melody's a lovely girl, truly. Pretty face, gentle demeanor. She'll make someone a wonderful wife. Why waste money on medical school when she'll quit the moment babies come along?" "She wants to be a neurosurgeon," I said. "She's 14. Last year, she wanted to be an astronaut. Girls have dreams, then they have babies. It's biology, dear." Frank nodded sagely, polishing his glasses with his napkin. "Your mother has a point. We've invested wisely in the boys' futures. Traditional values still mean something in this family." Traditional values, the phrase that had haunted my entire existence in this family. Traditional values that meant I'd worked night shifts throughout nursing school, while my brother got a free ride through business college. Traditional values that meant I was praised for my sacrifice as a single mother, while being simultaneously pitied for my failure to keep a husband alive, as if the drunk driver who killed Marcus had checked with me first. "Besides," Janine added, her voice honeyed with false sympathy, "nursing is such a good career for you, Diane. Flexible hours for a single mom. Melody could follow in your footsteps. Nurses are so important." The condescension dripped from every word. Janine, who hadn't worked a day since marrying my brother, who spent her afternoons at the country club planning charity luncheons where rich women congratulated themselves for raising money they'd never earned. I looked at each face around that table, my family, the people who were supposed to love and support us unconditionally. They'd just put a price tag on my daughter's worth and found her lacking. $35,000 for each boy. Nothing for the girl who could recite the periodic table at age 7, who volunteered at the hospital on weekends, who dreamed of discovering cures for the diseases that had taken her father. "Thank you for letting me know," I said finally, my voice calm as a flatlined heart monitor. "I appreciate the transparency about where Melody stands in this family's priorities." 4 years later, when those precious accounts were desperately needed and mysteriously empty, when my mother's jaw dropped to her chest in disbelief, when everything they'd built on prejudice came crashing down, I would remember this moment, the moment they showed me exactly who they were, the moment I decided to show them exactly who we could become. The Brennan family Sunday dinners were sacred, carved into our calendars like commandments. Every week without fail, 3 generations gathered around my parents' mahogany dining table in their Cincinnati home, a Victorian-era house that my mother had inherited and treated like a shrine to proper family values. I'd been attending these dinners for 38 years, first as a daughter learning to set the table correctly, then as a single mother teaching my own daughter to smile politely while being ignored. My husband Marcus had been dead for 12 years. A drunk driver on I-75 had ended his life when Melody was just 2 years old, leaving me with a toddler, a mortgage, and a nursing degree I'd just finished. The settlement money went straight to bills and Melody's future. Every penny accounted for in spreadsheets I updated monthly. While other widows might have crumbled, I built our life brick by brick, shift by shift, working 12-hour rotations in the cardiac unit at Cincinnati General. "Your mother's doing her best," Ruth would tell visitors, speaking about me as if I weren't standing right there. "It's not easy for a woman alone. Thank goodness she has family support." Family support. That meant Sunday dinners where my mother criticized my parenting choices while praising Todd's wife Janine for her Martha Stewart centerpieces. It meant Christmas gifts where the boys received expensive electronics while Melody got dress-up clothes and toy makeup sets. It meant watching my father teach Bryce and Cole about investments while telling Melody she had such pretty handwriting when she showed him her perfect report card. My brother Todd had what my parents called the American dream. He'd married Janine straight out of college, a sorority girl with blonde highlights and a trust fund that helped launch his real estate business. They lived in a house with columns out front, the kind that screamed success to anyone driving past. Todd sold commercial properties to chain restaurants and strip mall developers, deals my mother described as building the future of Ohio. The twins, Bryce and Cole, were 15 and already standing 6 feet tall, varsity football players who high-fived each other overseas on their report cards. "Boys will be boys," Frank would chuckle when they talked back to their mother or forgot to thank my parents for their gifts. "They've got spirit. That's what matters in business." Meanwhile, Melody sat at these dinners like a ghost everyone could see but nobody acknowledged. She'd learned to bring a book, tucked discreetly in her lap, reading about molecular biology while conversations flowed around her like she was furniture. At 14, she was all angles and determination, her father's sharp mind wrapped in my stubborn persistence. Her teachers called her gifted. My mother called her sweet but too serious for her own good. "You should encourage her to be more social," Ruth advised me one Sunday as Melody helped me clear plates. "Boys don't like girls who are too smart. She'll intimidate them with all this science talk." "Maybe she's not trying to attract boys, Mom. Maybe she's trying to cure cancer." "Don't fill her head with impossible dreams, Diane. You're setting her up for disappointment." This from a woman who'd never worked outside the home, who'd spent 50 years having her opinions formed by my father's Fox News habits and her Wednesday bridge club. Ruth Brennan had grown up in an era where women went to college to find husbands, not careers. She'd met Frank at Ohio State, dropped out junior year to marry him, and never looked back. In her mind, this was success. This was what women should want. My father, Frank, was quieter in his dismissal of Melody, which somehow hurt more. He'd been a mailman for 30 years, proud of his federal pension and his ability to provide. When he retired, he'd handed over the family finances to my mother completely, content to putter in his garage workshop and avoid conflict. "Your mother handles these things," he'd say whenever I tried to talk to him directly about family matters. The family trust from my grandfather was substantial, though nobody spoke exact figures. My mother parceled out information about it like rewards for good behavior. Todd knew more than I did, of course. Men needed to understand finances. Women needed to understand their place. "Diane makes good money at the hospital," my mother would tell her friends at church. Of course, it's shift work. Not ideal for a woman with a child, but what choice does she have? Choice. Everything in my mother's world came down to the choices women shouldn't have made. shouldn't have pursued careers that demanded long hours, shouldn't have raised daughters to dream beyond their circumstances, shouldn't have forgotten that biology was destiny and marriage was the ultimate goal. But sitting at those dinners, watching Melody absorb every slight with quiet dignity, I knew the truth. The choice I'd made was to raise a daughter who would never need anyone's permission to become extraordinary, even if I had to do it alone, even if my own family was the biggest obstacle we'd have to overcome. Everything changed during Thanksgiving dinner when Melody was 14. The dining room smelled of rosemary and sage. My mother's china gleamed under the chandelier, and 5 pies lined the sideboard like soldiers. Ruth had spent 3 days preparing, orchestrating the meal with the precision of a general planning an invasion. This was her favorite holiday, the one where she could display the family like trophies, proof of her successful matriarchy. My mother clinked her crystal glass with a silver spoon, standing at the head of the table with the satisfied smile of someone about to deliver life-changing news. Frank sat beside her, nodding preemptively at whatever she was about to say. "Frank and I have wonderful news," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of a royal decree. "We've been working with our financial advisor, Mr. Hutchinson, for the past 6 months. After careful consideration and planning, we've established college funds for our grandsons, $35,000 each for Bryce and Cole." The table erupted in celebration. Todd raised his wine glass so quickly he nearly knocked over the gravy boat. "Mom, Dad, this is incredible. The boys will be so grateful." Janine clutched her chest dramatically. "Oh, Ruth, Frank, you're too generous. This will change everything for them." Bryce and Cole high-fived across the table, already spending money they wouldn't see for 3 years. "Thanks, Grandma. Thanks, Grandpa," they chorused, their attention already drifting back to their phones. I sat perfectly still, waiting. Surely there was more. Surely my mother would continue with, "And of course we've set up the same for Melody." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Melody sat beside me, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth, waiting for her name. It never came. "What about Melody?" I finally asked, my voice cutting through the congratulations. My mother's smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Well, we had to be practical with our resources, dear." "Practical?" The word tasted bitter. "You just announced $70,000 for Todd's boys. How is excluding Melody practical?" Ruth sighed the way she did when I was child and asked for something unreasonable, like staying up past 8 or wearing pants to church. "Diane, let's be realistic. Girls have different paths available to them. Melody's pretty, she's sweet, she has a gentle nature. She'll probably get married right out of high school anyway. Why waste money on college when she'll just end up being a housewife?" The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I could feel Melody shrinking beside me, trying to disappear into her chair. "Mom, she has a 4.0 GPA. She's taking AP classes as a freshman. She wants to be a doctor." Ruth actually laughed, a tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. "A doctor? Honey, that's 7 years of schooling at least, not counting residency. By then, her biological clock will be ticking so loud she won't be able to hear her patients. The boys, however, they need good educations to provide for their future families. It's simple economics." Frank nodded sagely, finally contributing his wisdom. "Your mother has a point, Diane. We've seen it happen time and again. Girls get these big career dreams, then love comes along and poof, everything changes. Remember Jennifer from down the street? Harvard Law, and now she's selling essential oils on Facebook." "Jennifer had 3 children and chose to prioritize them," I said carefully. "That was her choice. Melody deserves to have choices too." Todd cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Diane, it's their money. They can distribute it however they see fit." "Of course you'd say that, Todd. Your children are benefiting from their sexism." "Sexism?" My mother's voice rose an octave. "How dare you? We're being practical, realistic. Traditional values aren't sexism, they're wisdom." Janine decided to help, which only made things worse. "I had a psychology degree, Diane, and look at me now. Happiest I've ever been, staying home with the boys, supporting Todd's career. That degree was a waste of my parents' money." "Then why didn't your parents ask for a refund?" I shot back. "Diane," my mother snapped, "you're being ridiculous and ruining Thanksgiving. The decision has been made. The papers are signed. The accounts are established. If you really believe in this, Dr. Nonsense, you can pay for it yourself. You make decent money as a nurse. I looked around the table at my family. Todd avoided my eyes, suddenly fascinated by his cranberry sauce. Janine pursed her lips in disapproval. My parents sat united in their conviction. And Melody, my brilliant, ambitious daughter, stared at her plate with tears threatening to spill. "You're right," I said quietly. "I will pay for it myself, every penny, and when Melody becomes the neurosurgeon she dreams of being, when she's saving lives and changing the world, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you looked at a brilliant young woman and saw nothing but a future housewife. I want you to remember that you chose to invest in mediocrity over excellence because of what's between their legs." That night, as I tucked Melody into bed, she asked me a question that broke my heart into pieces I'm still finding years later. "Mom, am I worth less because I'm a girl?" "Never," I said, sitting on the edge of her bed and taking her hands in mine. "You're worth everything, and I'm going to prove it. Not to them, but to you." "But Grandma said girls don't need education." Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm wasting time dreaming about medical school. I turned on her bedside lamp so she could see my face clearly. "Your grandmother is wrong. She's been wrong her entire life, and she's too scared to admit it. You are going to become exactly who you want to be, and I'm going to make sure of it." The next morning, while Melody was at school, I drove to Fifth Third Bank and made 3 decisions that would reshape our entire future. First, I withdrew my entire emergency fund, $8,000 I'd saved over 5 years, and opened a high-yield investment account in Melody's name. The banker looked concerned when I emptied my safety net. "Are you sure about this, Miss Brennan? Emergency funds are important for single parents." "My daughter is my emergency," I replied, signing the papers. Second, I marched into my supervisor's office at Cincinnati General and requested every available overtime shift, every holiday coverage, every double that came available. "I need maximum hours," I told Patricia, my nursing director. "Diane, you'll burn out. You're already working full-time. What's going on?" "I'm investing in my daughter's future since my family won't." Patricia, a woman who'd worked her way up from bedpan duty to department head, understood immediately. "I'll put you first on the call list. The holiday shifts pay double time and a half. Third, and most significantly, I enrolled Melody in the Cincinnati Academy for Advanced STEM Studies, a private preparatory school that cost $15,000 a year. I'd have to work an extra 20 hours a week to afford it, but they had a medical sciences track that included laboratory experience and hospital shadowing programs. "We're declining Sunday dinners for a while," I told my mother over the phone that afternoon. "What do you mean, declining? Family dinner isn't optional, Diane." "It is now. Melody has academic commitments on weekends. Her new school has Saturday programming." "New school? What new school? The public school isn't good enough suddenly?" "The public school doesn't have advanced biology labs or partnerships with the University of Cincinnati Medical School. The academy does." My mother's voice turned icy. "You're being dramatic and spiteful. This is about the college funds, isn't it?" "This is about my daughter's future. If you won't invest in it, I will." "You're poisoning her against her family, Diane, filling her head with unrealistic expectations. When she fails, and she will fail, it will be your fault." I hung up without responding. The schedule I maintained for the next 2 years was brutal. Monday through Wednesday, I worked 12-hour day shifts. Thursday and Friday, I picked up evening shifts in the emergency department. Saturdays, I worked private duty nursing for wealthy patients who paid cash. Sundays, which used to be family dinner days, I spent with Melody, reviewing her homework, discussing her projects, and teaching her about financial literacy. "This is a compound interest calculator," I showed her on my laptop one Sunday. "If we invest $100 a month starting now, by the time you're in medical school, you'll have significant funds." "But Mom, you're exhausted. I see you falling asleep at the kitchen table." "Temporary exhaustion for permanent gains," I told her. "Besides, every hour I work is an hour investing in someone who's going to change the world." I taught her about stocks, bonds, mutual funds. We opened a small brokerage account with $500, and I let her make investment decisions. She researched for hours, finally choosing 3 tech companies she believed would grow. Within a year, that $500 had become $2,000. Meanwhile, I watched from social media as my nephews coasted through high school. Bryce posted photos from parties every weekend. Cole shared videos of himself playing video games instead of studying. Their grades, when Janine occasionally bragged about them, were C's and B's at best. "Boys mature later," my mother would comment on Facebook. "They'll catch up when it matters." My mother called monthly, leaving voicemails that ranged from guilt trips to outright accusations. "You're destroying this family," one message said. "Melody needs her grandparents, and you're denying her that relationship out of spite." But I wasn't denying Melody anything. I was giving her everything my family wouldn't: belief in her abilities, investment in her dreams, and proof that her worth wasn't determined by her gender, but by her determination. Every exhausted morning, every missed lunch break, every holiday shift was a brick in the foundation of her future. 4 years passed like a blur of hospital shifts and late-night study sessions. Melody, now 18, had been accepted to Johns Hopkins University with a partial scholarship for pre-med. The morning of her graduation party, which my parents had reluctantly agreed to attend after months of my father's tentative phone calls, Todd's silver Mercedes pulled into my driveway an hour early. He stepped out looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. His usual confident salesman swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked dangerously close to panic. "Diane, I need to talk to you, right now, alone." We stepped onto my front porch. The morning air was crisp, and Todd kept running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood I hadn't seen in years. "The college funds are gone," he said without preamble. "What do you mean gone?" "I mean gone. Empty. $70,000 vanished." His voice cracked on the last word. I set down my coffee cup carefully, my mind racing. How is that possible? Those were protected accounts. Mom gave me and Janine access last year, said we were trustees since the boys were getting close to college age. Janine thought it was general family money, like a savings account we could manage. She invested it all in her friend's business venture, some essential oils multi-level marketing scheme. We lost everything. Both accounts completely drained. The weight of his words settled between us like a fallen tree. Does Mom know? I have to tell her today. The boys just got their acceptance letters. Bryce got into Ohio State, Cole into Cincinnati State Community College. We need those funds, Diane. His voice broke completely now. I'm mortgaged to the hilt, 3 properties underwater. The real estate market tanked with the recent interest rate hikes. I've got nothing. We've got nothing. And Janine? She's in the car, crying. She didn't know they were college funds. She thought she was helping, investing in a sure thing. Her friend promised triple returns in 6 months. As if orchestrated by fate itself, my mother's white Cadillac pulled into the driveway, followed by my father's truck. They emerged dressed for a celebration, my mother wearing her favorite pearl necklace and the satisfied expression of someone who expected gratitude for gracing us with their presence. "Todd?" My mother's smile faltered, seeing her son's destroyed expression. "What are you doing here so early?" "We need to talk inside," Todd mumbled. The revelation happened in my living room, the same room where I'd spent countless nights working on budget spreadsheets while Melody studied at the dining table. Todd's confession came out in stutters and half sentences, while Janine sobbed into a throw pillow I'd bought at Target on clearance. The funds are gone, all of it, $70,000. My mother's face went through a series of transformations I'd never witnessed before. Confusion shifted to disbelief, then to rage, and finally to something that looked like complete system failure. $70,000 gone? She collapsed onto my secondhand sofa, the one she'd always criticized for being too firm. How could you be so irresponsible? You gave us access, Janine wailed, mascara streaming down her cheeks. You said it was family money that needed better management. For the boys' college, my mother shrieked. It was always for college. Frank, for the first time in my memory, shouted at Todd. You incompetent fool! That was their future. Your boys' future. We can take out loans, Todd said weakly. With what credit? Frank spat. You're bankrupt in everything but paperwork. In that moment of chaos, Melody walked in from her room wearing her valedictorian sash over her dress, holding an envelope. The room fell silent as if she'd fired a gun. "Grandma, Grandpa," she said with perfect composure, "I wanted to share my news with everyone together. I've been accepted to Johns Hopkins University for pre-med. I also received the Robertson Science Scholarship, which provides $30,000 per year for 4 years. That's $120,000 total." My mother's mouth opened and closed without sound. Melody continued, her voice steady and clear. "Additionally, the investment account Mom and I built together is now worth $47,000. We started with $8,000 4 years ago and grew it through careful research and strategic investments in biotechnology and renewable energy sectors." She turned to look directly at my mother. "I wanted to thank you both. When you said I wouldn't need college money because I'd just get married anyway, it became the motivation I needed. Your doubt became my fuel. Every time I wanted to quit studying, I remembered that you'd invested $35,000 in my cousins and $0 in me because of my gender. It pushed me to earn every scholarship available, to prove that young women don't need your permission or your money to succeed." She turned to her cousins, who looked like they'd been struck by lightning. "Bryce, Cole, I'm sorry about your college funds, but you can still go to college. With federal aid, work-study programs, and student loans, you can make it happen. I've researched some programs for you both. Success isn't determined by how much money someone hands you, but by how hard you're willing to work for your dreams." The graduation party that followed was the quietest celebration I'd ever hosted. My mother sat in the corner of my living room, clutching her pearls like a lifeline, watching Melody interact with her guests. The attendees weren't family friends or relatives, but rather the people who'd actually supported Melody's journey. Dr. Harrison from her STEM program, her mentor Dr. Patel from the hospital where she volunteered, 3 young women from her investment club, and her advanced biology teacher who'd written her recommendation letters. Before leaving, Ruth approached me with tears streaming down her carefully powdered cheeks. "I was wrong," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was so terribly wrong." "Yes, you were," I said simply, not offering the comfort she sought. "But Melody isn't vindictive. She's already planning to establish a scholarship fund for young women in STEM once she becomes a doctor. She says she wants to help girls whose own families don't believe in them." My father stood behind my mother, his shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen. "We failed her," he said quietly. "We failed both of you." "You did," I agreed, "but she succeeded anyway, maybe even because of it." Todd's family struggled through the following years, but eventually found their footing. The boys attended community college while working part-time jobs at a local warehouse. For the first time in their lives, they learned the value of a dollar earned rather than given. Bryce discovered he was good at welding and entered a trade program. Cole found his calling in automotive technology. They were building careers with their hands and their sweat, perhaps learning more about real success than any university could have taught them. Janine got her first job in 15 years, working as a receptionist at a dental office. The humiliation of losing the college funds had shattered her confidence, but slowly, paycheck by paycheck, she was rebuilding it. She apologized to me last Christmas, a genuine apology without excuses or deflection. "I was so wrong about everything," she said. "Watching Melody succeed while my boys struggle has taught me that privilege without purpose is worthless." My relationship with my parents slowly healed over the years, though it was forever changed. They attended Melody's white coat ceremony 3 years later, sitting in the back row of the auditorium. When she walked across that stage to receive her first medical coat, I watched my mother cry the kind of tears that come from profound regret mixed with unexpected pride. During her speech as class representative, Melody said something that still echoes in my mind. "I stand here not in spite of those who doubted me, but because of them. Every closed door taught me to build my own. Every no became my watch me." To the young women out there who've been told they're worth less, that their dreams are too big, that they should settle for less because of their gender, don't believe it. Your worth isn't determined by others' limitations, but by your own determination. The audience erupted in applause, but Melody wasn't finished. I want to thank my mother, who worked 16-hour days to pay for my education when my own grandparents said I wasn't worth investing in because I'd probably just get married anyway. Mom, you taught me that the best revenge against discrimination isn't anger, it's excellence. Today, Dr. Melody Brennan runs a free clinic in underserved communities while completing her residency in neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. She's also engaged to a wonderful pediatric surgeon she met in medical school, Dr. James Chen. Their partnership is built on mutual respect and shared ambitions, not financial dependence or traditional gender roles. They're planning a small wedding next spring, which my mother will attend as a humbled guest rather than the matriarch she once was. My mother, now 73, volunteers at Melody's clinic every Tuesday, registering patients and hearing stories of other young women fighting for their dreams against family opposition. Last month, she called me crying after meeting a 17-year-old girl whose father refused to sign her college applications. I was that father, she sobbed. How many girls did I discourage over the years with my outdated beliefs? The answer was too many, but redemption doesn't require a number. It requires action. My mother recently announced she's donating her entire remaining inheritance to establish a college fund exclusively for granddaughters and great-granddaughters in families who think girls don't need education. She named it the Melody Brennan Second Chances Fund. The greatest lesson from our story isn't about money or revenge or even success. It's about the power of believing in someone when the world tells them they don't matter. Every dollar I invested in Melody's education, every hour I worked instead of resting, every family dinner we missed to study instead, these weren't sacrifices. They were investments in proof that a girl's worth has nothing to do with her gender and everything to do with her courage to pursue her dreams. Sometimes the best response to, "she'll probably just get married anyway," is a lifetime of proving that marriage and success aren't mutually exclusive, and that a woman's worth has never been determined by either. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been told you're not worth investing in, or if you're fighting to prove someone wrong, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about your own journey of overcoming doubt, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of triumph over discrimination. Remember, your worth isn't determined by others' limitations, but by your own determination to succeed.